Jessica Moore, and I'm the Director of Global Alliances here at Inflectra. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. I'd like to welcome you to AI in the Real World. This is our first public event under InflectraCon360. As many of you know, InflectraCon is our user and thought leadership conference, and ICON360 keeps the fun going all year long. We are joined today by our illustrious panel of Adam Sandman, Jeff Payne, who will also be our moderator today, Tamika Burgess-Rose, and last but definitely not least, my friend Jim Ball. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves, but I just wanted to let you know we will be taking questions at the end today. So I will be monitoring the chat and I look forward to hearing from you there. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and kick it off with Adam. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Adam Sandman, founder and CEO of Inflectra, live in the Washington, D.C. area, and happy to be here today.
Thanks, Adam. Jeff?
Jeff Payne, founder and CEO of Coveros, live in the Washington, D.C. area, and happy to be here as well.
Yes. Thanks, Tamika, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tamika Burgess-Rose. I am a quality assurance test manager with CIBC Caribbean, formerly CIBC First Caribbean, and I've been in banking for about 20 years, a little bit more than that, and test manager for 7 of those years. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much. And Jim?
I'm Jim Ball. I work for the Cincinnati insurance companies out of Fairfield, Ohio. I'm in the Cincinnati area. I'm a DevOps engineer coming from the testing world for the last 25 years. So that's about it.
And all of Jim's ideas today are his own.
Well, I will say, yes. I'll give my disclaimer. Anything I say may or may not represent my company. It's more my independent thought. Thank you very much.
And Jeff, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about AI in business today with our panelists here. I want to kick things off, get right into it. And Adam, if you could kick off an answer, I'm going to kind of rotate around. Anybody who wants to jump in and get your thoughts in, please do. We want to make this a very lively conversation, discussion, debate. Start off with you, Adam, if you could comment. Obviously, AI has become a hot topic, in case you haven't noticed. Right? I mean, it's everywhere and it's pervasive in business. Everybody's talking about it, what its role is in business. I want to get your thoughts on a couple things. One is, it seems like it came out of nowhere. Now, maybe that's not necessarily true, but give me your thoughts on what happened that brought AI to the forefront, and what role do you see it playing in business, across the organizations these days? What are you seeing?
So, AI has clearly been around for a long time. I actually studied it in high school in the 80s. So it's been around. Expert systems have been around for a while. I mean, but in November 2022, ChatGPT hit the public zeitgeist. And I think it was the first ever truly B2C, business to consumer AI product. Like, if you think about it, AI has been embedded in a lot of the products we've been using, from Apple, from Amazon, from Google to Microsoft, going to the airport, image recognition, passport scanning, many of the business apps we use. There was AI latent in everything we've been doing for a long, long time. Analytics, deep machine learning, that's been around for a while, but no one had thought to expose it to the end user and say, here is your virtual assistant. You can have it do anything under the sun, and we haven't thought of all the use cases, but you can think of them yourself. And I think it was that opening of the prompt engine and the ability to have it write poetry, to do graphics, to do your homework, to do anything fun, stupid, crazy, that finally got people excited about it as it became a product rather than a technology under a product. In the same way the internet had been around since the 1950s, the ARPANET, and it wasn't until Mosaic launched the browser in 1993 or 4, I remember in college when it came out, we're like, oh, I can go places and do things. Wow. So it was the B2Cing of the internet and the B2Cing of AI that I feel like is what's really propelled this last wave of innovation. So again, internet's been around for a long time, web not so much. So that's my, I don't know, off the cuff thoughts about it.
Nice. Tamika, Jim, one of you want to jump in next? What do you think?
I agree. It's more of, it was there, but it was more of that's a techie thing, I don't understand it. And with it being released with prompts, and the introduction of cloud offering and building up all of the infrastructure and power that is needed to support it and make it very responsive, I think the average person now goes, oh wait, I can do that now. And it now opens up all of these opportunities for creativity, good and bad, but we're going to focus on the good. And leveraging thoughts that you thought you needed 5 or 6 other people to support you, when you can now go, let me ask the chat GPT and see what it says. And it takes you to another level, and it keeps your creative juices flowing, and you keep asking more questions and leveraging it. So I think it's just the opportunity of leveraging the ability to explore what I wanted to before, but I couldn't because I didn't have the understanding of the foundation, and now being able to just take it to the next level.
Yeah. So Adam, of course, you handled it. Hit the nail on the head there with that. October, November of 2022 is when we started getting the first. Hey, you can look at this. So then I hop on there, and then the tester in me starts taking over, and I start figuring out the boundaries and all that good stuff with it. Like Excel, for the last 5 or 6 years, Excel has had the analyze data where you could ask it generative questions, right? And get, tell me about my data, tell me about the me, you could say those kinds of things. And that was cool, but I don't think a lot of people, get into pivot tables and get to that point in Excel. Whereas this was, how do I make a souffle, right? And that will get to, pretty much anyone, not just, tell me about these boring numbers in Excel.
Yeah, and Adam, you made a good point that, AI has obviously been around for a long time. Glad you studied it in high school, by the way. It's been around for a long time. I've heard many people say something that I think is interesting, which is that as soon as AI solves a problem, we don't think about it as AI anymore. It's just part of, life, or part of business, or part of our applications. Great example is cruise control in our cars. So when the first cruise control systems came out, for anybody that had some of those early systems, they were very herky-jerky. Like, it was like, press the accelerator. No, don't press the accelerator. Press the... So it felt like you were herky-jerky.
Like in my car, me driving.
Yeah, it's like your car has 300,000 miles on it, right? But then what happened was, fuzzy logic, right, which is an AI technique, was applied to that to allow it to smooth itself out and not be so binary in terms of go, stop, go, stop. And that smoothed out the cruise control in cars. And today we don't even think about that, right? I mean, it's AI solved the problem, and now it's not AI, it's just cruise control, right?
Well, it's even grown from there, Jeff, right? The adaptive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either grown from there is, I don't feel comfortable being 30 feet away from this car. I need to set mine for 60. And so the cameras watch, and the laser,
follows the white
laser, LiDAR,
and slows down for you if you're not quick to the brake, right? Car in front of you slows down, it slows down. Yeah, no, it's it's things like that are AI driven that we don't even think about as AI. My CTO often says that if it's not magic, then it's not AI. Like, we once we figured it out, and we figured out how to use something, then it's not artificial intelligence anymore. It's just, business applications. So
the way it is.
Yeah. What role is it going to play? So let's finish this question up. What role is AI going to play? What's your vision for where it could head in businesses in particular going forward? Anybody want to tackle that?
I think in a practical, from my perspective, practically, it is there to, I'll give a great example, or what I think is a great example. So with my move to DevOps, I am doing a lot of Bash, I'm doing a lot of PowerShell, and then PowerShell 7, and they all have kind of different flavors. So I know what I want to do, but the nomenclature of any given, if I'm hopping into a Python real quick or to a HTML, they all have different approaches. So it's there to be a buddy of mine to say, hey, I do this. What is this Bash command equivalent in PowerShell, right? So it spits it out close to what you need. If you need to go look at a reference, you can get there from there. But that's a practical example where it keeps me in a flow, where I know what I want to get at, but then I use it short term and then, verify its results when I get them in.
Tamika, Adam,
Yeah,
thoughts?
I agree. Exactly. What I leverage it for. So there are so many opportunities of discovering new things, and I like to learn. And I find that every time I hit a roadblock with a test automation script or a trying to understand a feature that is being introduced for an application or an infrastructure, I find myself asking my companion, um, what how does this work? What does it do? How can I break it? And then build from there my scripts or my test cases so that I can um, validate what it's suggesting and see if it actually does that. I find it very helpful in that regard.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Thoughts?
used it on the biz dev side. I mean, so on the biz dev side, I mean, obviously it's been used a lot in programming, and I don't do so much of that anymore because I'm fortunately or unfortunately running the company. Occasionally I'll dabble and they'll slap my hands. But in the business side, we found it very useful because what we often would get, for example, is an RFP coming in. An RFP request for proposal is tell me about how your tool, name of tool, does X, Y, and Z. And we have all this information. It's all over our website. It's in brochures, white papers. We absolutely know how to answer that question. But I guarantee you, it is a pain in the neck to have to answer like 50 of these questions in a spreadsheet and summarize what's effectively all over our website into 2 paragraphs. And so we've been using it for that. You would say, put in the question, why is Spiritest good at X, Y, and Z in the RFP? And it spits out a bunch of text. And because we know the product, we look at it and go, that's right, that's right. Oh, that's not true. We'll get rid of that. But it's just an incredible time saver for our biz dev teams that are not having to write these RFPs effectively boilerplate, customized by question. It's really good because it's not quite boilerplate, but it's not quite unique content. And so it's really tedious. And sales teams don't want to be doing this stuff. They'd much rather be out there doing demos, talking to customers, that kind of thing. So I know we found it very helpful there. In terms of like on the automated testing side of where we see some of our clients going with it. I mean, they're pushing the envelope and they want it to be able to take manual tests and generate automation from a manual test. And the industry as a whole is getting closer to that holy grail. I don't know if we're going to get there, but we're seeing that GPT 4, 5, and 5 its image recognition is good enough to be able to understand what a screen looks like and what things on a screen look like. And that changes a lot of how test automation is going to be done, where we're relying right now on locators and CSS and relatively primitive concepts. We'll look back and go, why were we doing that? Why are we having people act like robots and manually go F12 and get locators and stick them in code? That seems like crazy stuff. That's probably the future for automated testing. I suspect it'll be visual, much more visual. I'm hoping. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
that is a great point.
Jim.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the fact that you can take a screenshot of an error and drop it in is mind blowing. That is probably one of the greatest benefits I've seen in the last couple of months is them taking the OCR and being able to react from that or find elements or do things like that. That's a huge one.
Yeah, that's a great one. So another question for you all as business leaders. So obviously there's lots of tools being thrown at us from various companies. There's techniques, there's capabilities. We're just inundated right now with AI capabilities, right, across everything that we do. So as a business exec, a business leader, how do you parse through all that? How do you figure out what's worth investing in? And how do you measure the ROI or the value in the things you're investing in terms of AI? Jim, you want to kick us off with that one? What are your thoughts on that?
That is a question I'm looking for the answer to as being part of this panel as well. But it's one of those things where, Jeff, that I would say that if you're not using it, you're falling behind. But I can't tell you what that, I can't put a value on that dollar. Yeah, I know that my competitors are using it. I know that they're beginning to get an advantage. And if they can, do some of the things that Adam was talking about as far as, taking an RFP, for example. It's funny to say that, Adam. I probably have never told you guys about this company I used to work for back in the late 90s. It was called Sant Corporation. It was RFP Master. And basically we tried to emulate what you're using it for right now, right? So we create a large database of stuff, and then when those words came up in a RFP, then we have a section of these are the 4 things we can pull into the RFP to answer those questions, right? So reflecting back on, yeah, we were mocking artificial intelligence, 24 years ago. So I don't know. I'm looking to find out how do we quantify what's happening right now. I know that if I don't, I'm going behind, but I can't tell you with a number what that is.
Jim, what's the impact of that to your business? I mean, as an insurance company, you're not a software company, so it's not like you have to build software products. Is it that other insurance companies will have more advanced, models than you? I guess, what is the impact to the company?
That was exact. So it's modeling. It's modeling and rates and underwriting. I mean, all of that stuff can be automated. It's a ton of data science, right? So you start building your models, and remember, in this world, your data is your brand, right? And so the more you can get into your data and find out things about it, the better product you can offer your customers and price it right.
Yeah, with climate change stuff too, like trying to figure out how you price.
Yes. Well, areas, policies, right?
Yeah.
Mapping and
yeah,
tons of things.
How about you, Tamika? How are you all using AI, and how are you measuring value or return for what you all are doing?
So we're in our planning phases right now. So we're not 100% using it for a lot of things. From a QA perspective, we have just completed our testing of our Azure OpenAI Spira app that we want to leverage. And one of the things that we're looking at is for our metrics, how do we determine if this is beneficial to the team? So we're looking at, and the intention is to start monitoring things like when the team generates the test cases or the developer tasks, what is the quality that they're getting from the tool? And is it similar to what they would have come up themselves with? Are they getting more? Do we have full coverage? And from those that they did not consider in their assessment before they clicked the button, what defects did we identify that we could have missed? See if it improved our defect management and tracking, as well as just overall monitoring our test planning timeline, because for us drafting manual test cases takes a longer time than test execution, depending on the size of your project, right? But if we can reduce the turnaround time for the planning and get into the execution, I think that will be most beneficial to the organization, because one of the challenges is not having full coverage of the test cases, missing critical defects, and then having to revisit that, which extends the timeline of the project. So those are the things that we're looking at to monitor and hopefully be able to give Adam some good metrics to say this is what we identified and we were successful.
And then and then the idea for us is we can then improve how we use it. I mean, this was, so back to a little bit to Jeff's earlier question about what happened in November 2022. I'd say one thing that happened never mind for the end user, for the layperson using ChatGPT, the other thing that really happened is we often forget the power of APIs. So OpenAI released a very easy to use way for programmers to interact with it. Before this, like we've been thinking about AI for a while, but it was like we got to hire a bunch of data scientists, we got to hire, people understand LLMs, we got to do all this training and all this stuff. And we found that, if we just put a requirement in through this API, see what comes out. Will people like it? Really agile, MVP. And clients, like Tamika and others said, this is pretty good. And we're like, it is pretty good. And our head of QA said, when can I have this? And we're like, well, it's just in development. We only developed it a week ago. He goes, and your point is, so yeah, we were surprised. And I think if you look at some of the other companies that are in this space, without mentioning other cloud vendors who are not Microsoft, we won't remain nameless, they have not made it so easy for developers to get access to this stuff. And the developer experience is something that is really important. I think OpenAI made the developer experience as easy as it made the end user experience. And I think that's been a critical enabler and reason why it's taken off so quickly as well.
That's a good point. And we at Coveros, we've been doing a survey of, technologists, business people, trying to understand how AI is being used in business today and technology today. I'm going to cite some stats that we've come up with later. But one thing that came out of it that's relevant to trying to, measure ROI or measure value, and it really came from a gentleman from Standard & Poor's. His name's Sudeep Kesh. He's going to be one of the keynoters at the new AICON USA conference. Big plug for that. Vegas, early June. Be there, be square. We just started this conference this year, and it's going to be hot. But he's a business exec, and he's part of the team that is thinking through for Standard & Poor's, what does AI mean for us? And one of the things that he emphasized, which I'm totally on board with, is that you need to be very intentional about your strategy and the experiments that you run. He said a lot of companies, and even inside of his organization, and it's been like that for other companies we've talked to, they're kind of going willy-nilly all over the place and just trying things, right? It's like, let's try everything and see what sticks. Let's see what happens. Whereas what I know he's trying to do, he's going to talk about this at AICON, is put together a framework where you define experiments using kind of a classical scientific hypothesis, right? Kind of structure, and upfront define and describe your goals, to baseline and benchmark where you're at, to figure out then, using AI, what the difference is, value is. I did a little experiment myself, just personally. I write a lot of blogs and do a lot of writing. And, for me, a blog, if I'm going to write a 500-word, 1,000-word blog on pretty much any software subject, in general, it'll take 3 to 4 hours to do that, from outlining thoughts to, coming up with initial content to checking sources to make sure I didn't, talk about things incorrectly, to integrating, to finalizing, the editing, right? That's about what it takes me usually when I'm going to write a blog. I usually block off a half a day to do it. Using generative AI techniques, start to finish, I've been averaging about 75 minutes to write a blog that I think is of similar quality. So, do the math on that. That's a pretty nice productivity gain. And I do encourage you all, as you're exploring with AI, anybody in the audience, is benchmark how long it takes you to do something and figure that out first, and then run your experiments and compare, just so you have some evidence of the value that you're getting out of some of these things, at least from a productivity perspective. We found that to be pretty useful and handy. Let's talk. We dove a little bit into testing, into software development. Obviously, a role that Gen AI has that we're all vested in here in this podcast is its impact or value in the software development process, right? Whether it's upfront requirements and design, or it's coding, or it's testing, it's maintenance, it's support, or overall management of the process, AI might have a role. So can you talk a little bit, maybe you can start this conversation off, Tamika, with, how are you all thinking about AI in the software development process itself, and how do you think it can be leveraged in the process?
So there are some tools that are available in the DevOps pipeline that I know my colleagues are leveraging, but they're currently experimenting with it with multiple options to determine which one works well for each agile project. So far, we've had opportunities to allow our teams to show what they've experienced. And last year, our teams had a internal hackathon, and the ideas and the quality of the solutions that they presented was mind-blowing. There were so many opportunities to make those projects live. There were opportunities to convert different solutions into one package and leverage Gen AI to do that conversion for them. It was just mind-blowing. But the teams now are also looking at additional things, how they could leverage it in the pipeline, such as improve the analysis of their code, or suggestions from their code with Copilot, for example. Not saying that they're using it, but that's an opportunity. Those are the things that we're doing right now, exploring those different tools that are available and see which ones give us the best bang for our buck.
That's nice. How about Jim? How are you all trying to do it, leverage it?
So our data scientists are using it, but they're in a black box using it right now. So we'll find out more about that in the near future. From my team's perspective, we manage our GitHub. So we have gotten GitHub Copilot for the developers that want it. And so right now we are just in an evaluation stage where we're learning to use it. We're trying to share tips of, hey guys, I know you don't love documentation, so just ask Copilot to explain your stuff and make that your MD file, right? I mean, that is your markdown file straight from there, because even if it's not perfect, it at least is, Copilot can read the code and he can tell you what he thinks it's supposed to be doing. And that's that might be more than we have right now in certain scenarios. So I think we're able to reduce our technical debt a little quicker. And in my opinion, it's a little bit more fun, because I could just go open up anybody's code and I could just start documenting it, and boom, we're done with that piece. And anybody who comes in next is going to have a little better idea. If it's not perfect, at least we're going to be that much closer. So we're kind of on our front end, getting our tips and tricks and kind of seeing what it could do for us. And in my personal life, in my personal development and stuff, I am using it a lot to kind of accelerate learning of, you mentioned it in the last question about the inundation of technology that we're stuck with every day, right? Somebody's always inventing something new for something we know about, and there's 15 different paths you can take. So it kind of accelerates your ability to evaluate that. And, you still have to make the ultimate decision at the end of the day, but you can get somewhere faster to decide if you want to continue down that path or not.
Well put. Adam, your thoughts?
So internally, obviously we have the AI stuff we're working on building, but internally we've been playing around with Windows Copilot. We use GitHub also, so that's been helpful. Not as helpful actually as we thought. It was sort of useful to some degree. Documentation, though, I definitely agree, that's been a big game changer. Our developers don't like documenting, and no one does, and it's really helped get some basics in place. And then also unit test creation, creating lots of permutations of unit tests with data entry parameters. Developers like to write happy path unit tests. AI can take those and make those a little less happy path and more robust. Those are some of the developer use cases. Obviously, we're using our own plugin to do some of the requirements and test planning, and we're using it in the product. So that's how we've been using it. If it's okay to mention, I can't mention the name of the company or the agency. I know someone who works for a government contractor who works for a government agency, and they can't tell me. It's highly secret, not classified, but like business sensitive secret. They've been able to do a mainframe COBOL to modern tech migration using AI, and they did it using requirements as the intermediate step. So they basically had the AI generate the document what this COBOL thing did, then take those and send it to a machine that generated Java, and that they were able to do it faster than a traditional port application of some legacy mainframe app. And that's about all I can say without breaking the confidence I was given, because apparently it's very sensitive because it's commercially sensitive technology.
I have a question for you, Adam, on that.
Yes.
How are you finding obviously with the unit tests of a happy path, how are you finding its permutations? Reasonable? Are they quick? Because I have not started messing with that piece yet.
I'd have to ask Simon, our CTO. I haven't been involved. I know he was doing it. I don't have good metrics. I know the documentation they found useful. I know they tried Copilot for actually writing boilerplate code, and it wasn't as useful as they thought. It was certainly helpful, but it wasn't like a game changer over like Stack Overflow based coding, which is sort of what people did. I think it's been helpful, but it's not by itself. They still have to have humans come in there and look at it. One of the problems is that some of our unit tests have dependencies across tests, so the permutations have to sort of match up, and so there's some inherent complexity and non-automaticity in some of our our functions that are being unit tested, which makes it a bit trickier. So that may be limitations of what we can do. I think there's been value in all the areas, but I think it's very much as was mentioned by Jim and Tamika, is that experimentation, it worked in certain cases very well and gave really high ROI. Other times it was back to what Jeff said. It wasn't much faster than state of the art. So it's a little bit. It's still, I would say, spotty is what I would say. Maybe that's the best way.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Adam. In fact, I'm giving a talk at Star East coming up next week, and also doing it a little bit of a twist on it at AICON, where I'm basically going to demo. Well, going to talk about the different ways in which any kind of call it a code assistant, AI assisted co-pilot kind of capability. There's lots of tools out there that help you in the development and test process. We're going to talk about the different use cases, but then I'm going to demo and write some code and write some tests and show you the good and bad with these tools, because I saw the same thing, Adam. There's definitely value in it. I would say that in general, and this is just anecdotal, I don't have statistics. I felt like the code that I could generate was more accurate than the tests that I was generating. And I'm not sure why exactly. It might just be how much training data they have, right, on various things. And maybe they don't have as much, good training data on unit tests and, different types of tests as compared to just raw code in the GitHub database. It might just be that, right? I mean, we know these models.
Simple, right? Page
development. They hugely depend on their training data. And if you don't have good training data, it's one of the reasons why I know I'm kind of interested to hear more about that case study where you went through requirements to migrate, because we have not yet seen great results taking code in COBOL and migrating it more than just you would with a, parser that translates it, spitting out something in a different language that's useful. And what I've heard is that's because there is not a massive amount of COBOL code in the public domain,
right,
that these models could learn from right now, right?
Yeah,
and that, of course, is going to restrict your ability to learn that stuff and figure out what to translate to.
One bizarre case we had was the opposite, where we were, one of our clients was asking us about our automation tool and wanted to know the AI functionality we had in it. And when we were kind of like, something's coming, we are working on stuff.
Yeah.
This is like 6 months ago. And they said, oh, well, look, we can do it for you. And they ran it through Copilot. It generated code in our RPs tool. And we're like, we want to say, how did it do that? But we're like, how did it do that?
Yes, of course it did.
Wait a second.
Of course that worked.
It was like, yes, that's exactly right.
Yes.
That's what we expected
you found
to do.
it. Yeah, you found it.
Yes. And then what we realized is we put a ton of really good resources out on GitHub
out there,
because for humans, we're like, well, humans want to test Microsoft Dynamics, AX, Nav, 365, Office 365, Salesforce, ServiceNow. You pick your favorite big app that people have to test. We'll create a framework. We'll put it on GitHub because we're nice. We'll put it on GitHub, make it public. And we just assume that's for humans. But guess what? It's for machines too. So the more you help humans, the more you help machines. It's symbiotic.
Yeah. I think the lesson learned here we're all getting to is that you should make sure your organization does not think somehow that these tools are going to automatically generate anything of value without human knowledge and intervention. I like the quote that I've heard several people say, which is that AI is not going to take your job. Someone who leverages AI is going to take your job, right? Exactly. AI is going to be integrated into everything we do, and you have to keep yourself up to speed on AI concepts and how to leverage them in your job to stay competitive. Now, speaking of staying competitive, let's talk a little bit about jobs and the job market and job industry and things like Devon AI. For those of you that haven't heard, this AI software developer that rolled out that's supposed to replace us all. What do you think the real impact is to the job market? And, what is AI going to do let's talk the technical fields, right? And I know you have some strong opinions about this, Adam, because you and I talked about this. So why don't you kick it off in terms of like what's going to happen going forward?
Well, I think I have strong opinions because one of my kids is in college and one has finished college, and I talked to all these parents who've just spent a lot of money to send their kids to CS school, and the joke I heard was back in the 2000s, everyone told you to become a lawyer because lawyers had lots of money. Then everyone told you to become an iBanker because iBankers had lots of money. Then 2008 happened, you didn't, and then everyone said, "Hey, become a computer scientist, you make lots of money." And now all the parents of all the Tiger parents are now saying, well, no, become an art history major because you're not going to get a job whatever you do, so it doesn't really matter. Uh, I mean, that's what I
So
think.
have fun, right? And
Have
still
fun
have some
doing it, right?
fun. Yeah.
And I know that some of the people in our company who joined recently who are CS grads from like local universities, they said a lot of their classmates are scared that when they come out in a year or two, there won't be the job market that their colleagues had 3 or 4 years ago, especially being junior programmers who haven't had an experience. And so I think back to what you said, Jeff. I think that's not true. I think these people are going to get jobs, but if they expect to come out and write code like they maybe did 4 years ago and write web apps or mobile apps and just churn out the same boilerplate rubbish, then they're probably going to be working in Starbucks. But if they're willing to learn and upskill and change their idea of what it means to be a technologist, then I think they're going to get jobs like never before. I don't know. That's my thought.
I take a I mean everybody's saying it, right? Everybody's saying that AI is going to take your job, and they're lining up who's going to get the axe first, and you have the C-suite saying, hey, we can start reducing our head count, we could do this, that, and the other. And I don't know about you guys. I think that anybody who thinks that that's even an option in the near future is out of their minds. This stuff is not ready for prime time. I'm assuming everybody has heard the whole Amazon shutting down their, you just grab stuff and leave the store and they bill you, right? So I think we're going to see a lot more things like that where, for those of you who don't know the story, Amazon actually had people watching cameras. It wasn't any kind of magic. It was just a room full of people with cameras everywhere, and they picked the items and they put it on your bill. Then they were calling that some incredible technology, AI that used RFID and all that. And I know there's been other examples of businesses kind of like Google's whole Gemini release was a sham, right? So I mean, everybody wants the edge, and everybody's selling AI as the next new thing. But I mean, honestly, using it every day, the amount of frustration that because I need something real quick. So let me, rather than go look at all the reference points, let me have it look at them for me, and it can't do it. And if it, Teresa Langston's on this call, and she's been wanting me to say this during it, is the hallucinations this thing has is amazing. Exactly. I mean, it will make up stuff that is just, yeah. And so yeah, it is a
yeah. And I love when you call, you call a chat bot on it, they immediately, of course, reverse their
as an AI.
direction.
I have no
right. Yeah. Oh no! Now I understand. No, I did. I meant the exact opposite. Now it's like you don't know what you're doing. You're just waffling around, and
Jeff, that is all I want. I just wanted to say I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. Don't waste my time. Just say I don't know, and I can go find something that will get me closer.
Well, and not in stuff that you really need, right? Like the other thing is sometimes it says, I don't know. Like it'll say, well, it usually says, I am not trained on that specific information. I'm like, well, why freaking not? Because that's what I actually need. I don't need you to tell me something that's just blatantly wrong and smile at me and nod your head like it's the truth. I don't need that.
I don't need you
to tell me, oh, sorry, I don't know anything about this. Sorry.
Right.
Tamika, what do you think? What have you seen? What do you think's happening in the job world?
I think what will happen is there will be a reduction in the need for large teams, but the persons who will be needed on those teams will need to have the knowledge to be able to identify rubbish from actual valid code. So I don't see it taking jobs. I see it balancing out what we have now. I can't say, I don't want to say, the impact in terms of demand and salary, but I do believe that you won't be seeing very large 15, 20 teams in a small company anymore. You're going to be seeing one or two leveraging the Gen AI as long as they themselves have maintained current knowledge of how to use it and delivering same quality results.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. Some stats for you all. So Gartner did a survey of large scale organizations, and 63% of those organizations right now say that they are using, kind of AI assisted technologies to help them build their code. Their estimate is by 2028, 75% of all software engineers will use AI-assisted tools in the software development process. And I think that's a great stat to remember, which means get on board. Even though these tools are not great, I did a webinar with Tariq King. Many of you know Tariq. He's an AI expert. He's been tracking this stuff for a long time. Tariq's message was, you're right, there's a lot of hallucinations. You're right, it makes a lot of mistakes. But guess what? It's going to get better. Don't use that as a reason to not invest in your future and figure out how to leverage AI, because you're going to have to leverage it to be successful. I think that was a great way to put it.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask you a question based on that? And this is one of the things that I'm really, really interested in moving forward. So, don't worry, it's going to get better. But how is it going to get better if it's just using AI code, because everybody's using what Copilot gives them, and that's what ends up in the piece that it's going back and learning from. So basically, at some point, we've diluted it so that it's just partially hallucinated, partially correct, partially incorrect. Absolutely. Whereas in the past, we've had 20 years of semi-solid development work that went into training this, and now we're going to be training it on
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tariq's answer to that, and hey, he's the PhD in this stuff, not me. But what he said was, think back 5 or 6 years ago when fundamentally we came up with some new architectures for machine learning. Call them transformer models, which is what GPT is based on. There were a bunch of advances. Transfer learning, where you could take something that was trained generically and fine tune it to solve a specific problem. He said, look, back then I was telling people this stuff was going to happen because even though it wasn't yet available, just based on the science and where it was, you could see what was going to happen as, computing power continued to advance, storage and memory got cheaper and faster. And he said, think about that. And now think about what's being done scientifically today and what the impact is going to be 5 years from now based on those advances. And he said, I can tell you, for knowing what's going on today, we're going to see leaps and bounds, not along necessarily the current vector, architectural wise, but advances that are coming out that could even more fundamentally transform and make these systems more accurate with brand new approaches that are just being experimented now. I don't personally know what those things are, but if somebody like Tariq King tells me that, I'm going to sit up and listen that, okay, some stuff is still coming, right? And we shouldn't be discounting what's happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement.
Tariq told us a lot of these things, in our in Star East over the years, right? So always enjoy hearing him. So along that line, though, what about so because people are now realizing where all this information comes from, and this will probably go into our next question a little bit about security and risks and things like that, but with people pulling back now, knowing that Microsoft has been using their code, and New York Times doesn't want their stuff used in the training of open, so just all the people are now starting to hoard their data and pull it back. Do you see that as a limiting factor moving forward, that these models aren't going to be able to talk to each other and get the specific stuff they need from the different areas?
Yeah, and that does bleed right into our last question, which is, what are the risks here and what could derail what we're talking about? And Jim brings up a good point. What happens if data starts to be protected better? It will be protected better. What impact does that have on our models? What impact does that have on what we're doing? Tamika, Adam, any thoughts or comments on the risks and what impact, addressing those risks might have on leveraging AI?
I know that, there's many facets to this question. One obviously is that people want to know where the data is stored, where it's hosted, and all of that. Is it a private model, public model, all of that good stuff. But the other thing you start to think about is, what's the legal exposure. Let's say that I know that I think it's New York Times has got a lawsuit in. What if a court decides that the data that is in current ChatGPT version 4, just say, includes illegally copyrighted material? How do you extract it from an LLM? I don't know if you can. Like, does that make, could it be literally the injunctive relief is that model is illegal? Like, you have to shut that model down tomorrow, because a bit like the way the blockchain builds data on top of itself and you can't extract things, an LLM, because it breaks everything down into these transformer models with these giant trees of words and patterns, it's not possible to extract the New York Times content but leave the Washington Post content in, just hypothetically. So how do you remedy such an issue? And does that mean you might get this whole generation we've been built on is effectively a false vector? And the future of AI may not be this Gen AI LLM generic models, and maybe the future will be much smaller, privately trained models, which is actually what I think a lot of people thought the future was going to be until we had that November event in 2022.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I'm just
you're seeing some of that, Tamika. Your thoughts?
My concern and is confidentiality and integrity, right? A lot of we mentioned the good, but a lot of not so good intentions to utilize data exists, and it is hard for the average person to identify what's real and what's fake, right? So for me, the exploitation of the data and leveraging it for not so good reasons is the major risk that I see with the current models. I'm a huge believer in, the smaller models, sorry, but obtained through processes that make me comfortable. Right now, you have persons out there that are worried, is my data out there? Is my data out there? And you're not sure how to find that out. And by the time you find that out, it may have already been used for something that you are now left with the baggage of trying to sort out. So that's where the risk is for me, in terms of data, securing it, ensuring that what you have is authentic. It's the integrity of it is valid, and what guardrails we need to put up as individuals or organizations to ensure that whatever we use 2 years, 5 years on the road from now, we don't get a little notification from legal environment say that, I suspect you were using data from this environment that wasn't acquired correctly, and you need to take this down. So that's where my thoughts are.
Yeah. IP is something that's, I think, is going to be huge, right? Is that somebody can claim that I wrote that algorithm or I wrote that whatever, and it was used in a LLM. And at that point, I know that Mike, this was a big thing at the DevOps conference in Vegas last year, but Microsoft guarantees IP up to a point. I didn't delve into the legality of that, but using code that Adam wrote 10 years ago for Spira Team, and that ends up in my code. What, how does that expose my company? How does that expose me as an individual developer? Those kinds of questions, I think we haven't even scratched the surface on, and that's going to be.
Ooh. Or if it was GPL, let's say I wrote utility and I was a nice corporate citizen, I made it full GPL, and now it's in your commercial app.
Yeah,
right. I mean, just think about all the open source Docker and Kubernetes, and you start taking that stuff, and then it becomes privatized. Mirantis buys it. Well, now you have this privatized thing that you took the code from that was built out of it, and they can start being contract trolls or license trolls or IP trolls, right? So that is a whole. I mean, we probably could speak for hours on the things that are going to start coming out of this, and we'll look back on this in a few years and go, yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface on what how litigious people will be
So
to
the
to
parents
stop
who
stuff.
said their kids should be lawyers were right.
Yeah, right. But no, you're not going to need a lawyer, because that is one thing I think
AI
that,
lawyers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they'll scrape all the data and find it for the lawyers. You just need
Yeah.
and they send the mailings out automatically too. You just need a bank, and the bank. Yeah, you just need
Well, you need like two lawyers who are actually bots arguing this case in front of the Supreme Court, which is also
right.
now
Still
a bot,
a bot.
right? And we'll
Yeah.
just all watch it. It's entertainment. Maybe it's pay-per-view at that point, right?
Yeah.
It's like esports. We'll call it law sports or something, right?
Yeah.
And we are at the point where we need to take some
Oh.
questions from the audience. I want to give the audience some time. Thanks everyone for your comments. I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So we have had a few comments based on the conversation that's been going on over the last few minutes. I'll go ahead and read those out, and if anybody has any comments on them. We have heard from Saduba. I believe actually AI helps to increase and improve human being capabilities to have more time and other resources for things which AI cannot take over. It's the sense AI is a help to create new jobs, or in that sense, AI is a help to create new jobs. Example, architectural improvements, business strategical responsibilities which need human being intelligence. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. One of the things that I've argued, and I'm sure you all would agree as technologists, is if anybody is going to lose a job out of this whole thing, in my opinion, it's going to be those who all they've learned is syntax for languages. So if you went to coding camp and they taught you how to make an if statement with Java, you could be in trouble, right? But that's not computer science. That's not software engineering. Software engineering and computer science, whether it's applied to development or test or DevOps or whatever, is solving problems, critical thinking, design, and architecture. Those things currently, right, are not things that a code assistant is going to help you with. And that's why they get it wrong, because they might understand syntax, but they can't see the bigger picture. They don't understand the overall structure of what you're trying to do and its intent. And until they can, anybody who has those skills is going to be in huge demand going forward. What do you all think about what that comment? Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, critical thinking, scientific method, that's what you need to get your job done. You need to think outside of the that's where our minds, I don't feel like can ever be replicated, is the experience slash we have the scars, so we know what to avoid, whereas a computer model isn't going to understand negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement.
Tamika, Adam, your thoughts?
I mean, you like to think that, right? But you never know.
Yeah, see.
We were amazed when. So I guess here's an interesting. When we first looked at ChatGPT, I remember looking at it in November of 2022, back at that epoch, and I remember first asking some very practical questions, and I remember thinking, going, it looks like it scraped Wikipedia, which is basically, I guess, what it's doing. And I showed it to my wife, and she says, "Oh, okay, it's scraped Wikipedia. Big deal. It's efficient. It's useful." I then asked it to write a poem. So I asked it to write a poem, about time travel, Mars bars, and penguins, and Doctor Who, which is a love of mine. And it created a pretty fun poem that was worth reading. I'm like, that was more mind blowing to both of us than any of the factual stuff. It was that feeling like it somehow had created something that was
creativity.
New. Yeah, and I think, and I've heard people say that they've seen glimmers of that. And right now, maybe it's just a bunch of data and AI, IP stuff being munged in and turned into generic reproductions. But if we truly are at the beginning of this epoch, as Tamika is alluding to, I mean, maybe some of that creativity we find isn't as unique to our species and our brain size and our number of neurons as we think. And maybe that is part of the future. I don't know. I have no evidence that that's the case. I'm just
try to ask it to rhyme something, Adam. You'll see how quick that goes away.
Okay. Maybe it doesn't want to rhyme. Maybe it's a non-rhyming poem. It's like
tell
it
to rhyme. Yeah, tell it to rhyme. It's not good at that.
Okay.
Well, maybe we're approaching the end. Maybe we could wrap up with this final question, which is, what should software leaders be doing to help steer AI in the right direction within their organizations? Jeff, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so first we touched on it and we didn't get a chance to delve into it, but governance around what you're doing with AI is going to be a huge driving force in businesses. You've got to have a plan, a strategy. You've got to have guardrails and make decisions around, what technologies are you comfortable using, not using, where are the boundaries and guidelines. You've got to get that in place in your org. And that's why a lot of organizations are starting with a governance view of all of this and trying to figure that out first, because it's going to be critical. If you don't have that in place, then you're kind of in the Wild West and you could shoot yourself in the foot. I'll turn it over to the rest of the people to give their thoughts.
Tamika, Jim, Adam?
You want to repeat the question? I was focusing on what Jeff was saying.
Sorry. What should software leaders be doing to help steer AI in the right direction within their organization?
I would say allow experimentation, but within a set of boundaries, right? So you don't go dumping all of your stuff out there to see if it can, give you a nice GPT, right? Pour all you got to have very good controls, understand what the data is being used for. And yeah, so that's my side, is just the risk, manage your risk, but also kind of find out some of the things that can help you save time now. And then, kind of let some of the other folks stumble and stub their toes and have the big security breaches. And then, you can learn from that and not being on the bleeding edge on that is probably more important.
Yeah, for us, in addition to the security concerns and the exploring, we want to see persons interested in learning. So opportunities to take a course or experiment with the tool within a controlled environment where somebody can say, hey, maybe don't do that one, or try this one, and guide the process instead of having persons, paranoia kick in and want to avoid it completely. Allow them to consider how can it help you improve what you're doing now and be more efficient in your role. What do you need, and see how it can help you, and have them come up with thoughts and suggestions and try to see if they can implement it. If it's great suggestions that they need help with, take it to the next level. Maybe include it in a plan to get that delivered for that team so that they can improve.
And for our side, because we're a software firm, it's a little bit different, is that for us, it is a competitive advantage or non-advantage, like Jim had said earlier, that if other people are doing this, if we don't do this as a company, as a software company, we'll fall behind. So we've created basically within each team, we've given people, the remit to have some time and experiment without thinking about current product applicability. Do some blue sky stuff, do some experimentation, not in production, but then come up with some ideas. Because if you start to limit it too much to current product set, current roadmap, you can squash that creativity. So we want to try and do some blue sky stuff within a controlled environment, obviously, like the others mentioned. But that's really important for us if we're going to have the next capability that the people don't know they need, but they'll need when they see it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that ending on a creativity note sounds like a great way to wrap this up. Thank you, Jeff, Jim, Tamika, and Adam for being here this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Jeff, one more plug for the conference in June.
Yeah, AICON USA, Vegas, first week in June. Be there. It's going to be awesome. We'll have training classes, tutorials, keynotes, sessions, an AI summit for leaders, full week. It's going to be a blast, and we've got a great lineup, so check it out online.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
See y'all.